Hi, and welcome to Fight Me Nerd, a podcast where we talk about all our favorite things from all kinds of media. I'm Harley, and I'm joined in this episode by Morgan Fay and Matt Wimmer. Hope you enjoy. Yes, no, my cold opens are mandatory and terrifying.
Alright.
Mandatory. Anyway, so, if you had to fuck a boat... Nothing? No?
I wasn't going to talk about
no, this is the intro.
But
yeah.
Sure, fuck it.
Hey, who the fuck are you?
I am Matt Wimmer, sometimes known as Bismuth Telluride Powered.
And you?
I am Morgan Fay.
You're Morgan Fay.
I am Morgan Fay.
You're Matt Wimmer. I'm Harley. Hi, how's it going? Yes, that's Harley, spelled like the motorcycle. I hate you all.
No shame in being named after your dad's bike.
There's no shame in being named after a motorcycle. As someone who rides them, I love them, and I recommend them strongly.
We're talking too much about fucking for people to be... Moving right along. I might have to shorten up that awkward silence a little bit, but we're good.
Yeah.
Also, you asked me not to talk about Heinlein, and that literally has ships that end up taking on humanoid bodies so that they can bone people.
Well, yes,
So-
but if we leave it at that, it's fine.
Okay.
We don't have to describe how creepy and awkward that particular boning might be.
The particularly creepy ship one, I don't think ever gets a body.
Well, that's good. You don't allow your creepy ships to get by. I mean, that's actually a surprisingly common trope of the protagonist being so unfathomably attractive to everything else that inanimate objects around them do their best to become women so he can fuck them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun. That's a fun writer.
Well, let's be honest.
I'm getting 1,000-yard stares here.
I don't think that's a thing that's relegated to a particular creator. That's just like...
It's more common with particular creators.
Every dude that isn't getting enough.
Yes. Every dude that's getting enough and is writing a Mary Sue. But...
I mean, I want to be inside Moya, although I don't particularly want to fuck her. So Moya...
Carry on.
I think every ship that we're going to talk about we want to be inside of.
I started this. I don't know why I started this, but I started this.
This is your fault.
You have no one to blame but yourself.
Yes. So on this particular podcast, we are discussing who is best ship and who the fuck is Moya?
Moya is the best ship. There you go. Answer. She is a Leviathan. She's the main ship that the main characters of Farscape live on. Leviathans.
Yes, I was going to say by Leviathan.
They are
because I know
sentient...
you hate whales.
Yeah, she doesn't look anything like a whale.
Okay.
They're biomechanoid sentient ships.
Okay, in what continuity?
Farscape.
Farscape.
Yes.
Okay.
They are very cool. They're the builders who are this whole godlike species, and there's a really cute little bit when they're explaining. One of them actually shows up to... It's a long story, but he talks about how, you gave the Leviathans intelligence, and he's like, anyone can give a machine intelligence. I gave her a soul, because she is a living creature. She feels... She is very much a character, although she can't talk most of the time. There is another species of alien called pilots that have, like, a symbiotic relationship. They graft into the ship. Like, their circulatory systems are combined, and they communicate and operate the ship.
So it's a Trill spaceship.
I don't know what a Trill is.
What is a Trill?
That would be a Star Trek thing.
Okay, so it's like a Tribble then.
Moya does have a baby at one point.
Imagine if you had a... Alright then.
Yeah, okay.
Imagine if you were a person who had a Tribble living inside of you and you had all of the Tribble's memories. You might be close to a Trill.
See, that's something that sounds familiar, but I can't remember what I'm thinking about. But yeah, carry on.
Well, the Trill are a symbiotic species. They're actually two species from the same planet. One of them is a little worm thing. The other are humanoid. Okay. And they take the worm things and put them in the people, and they their minds sort of meld. And when the people side dies, they're able to actually remove the symbiote and put it into another person.
So what you're saying is they're Yeerks.
They're what?
Yeerks.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, that's from Animorphs. They're slug thingies that crawl into your mind and take over your body. They're the main antagonist of the series. And,
yes. I'm remembering that now. And well, it's a little bit like that, except with the Trill, it's symbiotic. It's not parasitic, it's symbiotic.
But anyway, regardless, since I brought up Animorphs, I will briefly mention the Blade ships from the Animorphs series, which are cool, but only deserve an honorary mention since there's nothing in the series that really goes into the Blade ships or the different kind of ships. We get a lot of cool ones. We get the the Biodome ships that the Andalites use. This is all inside baseball for Animorphs. They're real kids' books, but they get...
I think a lot of people... I mean, they started coming out when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So
no, they stopped coming out when I was a kid. But anyway, since you talked about Star Trek, I know where you want to go with this.
Of course. We got to dig right into everybody's... Well, maybe not everybody's. I'm sure everybody's got their own class that they like, their own individual ship that they like. I personally like anything called the Enterprise. Specifically, I like the Enterprise D. The Galaxy class is perfection floating through space.
Okay. So for us lay people, which series does the Enterprise D come from?
That would be Next Generation.
Next Generation. Okay, so Master T. Earl Greyhawk himself.
Yes. Card. I actually stopped to think about this. It's something I've pondered a long time ago, but I actually took a second to think about it again today after a long time. There's something about a spaceship with wings that makes no sense, yet is infinitely rewarding.
Okay.
The interesting thing about Starfleet ships, of course, is they've got a vaguely wing-like appendage called the nacelle. That is actually the warp drive system's outward appearance. And I think it's an interesting spin, sort of, on the wing idea, that here's this thing that has to stick out of the ship in order for it to go. It's actually a useful wing-like appendage.
Right. And it's just away from the ship so it doesn't, like, fuck up the rest of the ship if it explodes?
You know, I don't think it's ever been carefully explained as the why the nacelles are on the outside. I'm sure it's some sort of shape thing or something. Obviously, what it really comes down to is a design choice. It looks cool,
yes.
Yeah, but
designers rule the world,
think it's really cool. I mean, depending on the exact ship that you're talking about, the smaller ships, the nacelles are less separated from the ship. They look more like pontoons on the smallest ships, right?
Which is really the iconic Star Trek look, right?
I think, starting from the original series with the Enterprise, the nacelles were more pronounced and outside of the ship. But, they had shuttlecraft in that had that same pontoon look.
Right.
So both of those looks have been there from the start.
So since we're talking about Star Trek, we might as well get to the other fucking elephant in the room, I suppose you'd call it. The Millennium Falcon. Honorably mentioned because nobody here likes Star Wars. Hey!
And it's out in the open for everyone to hear.
Yeah. No, nobody here is a big fan of Star Wars for our own little meticulous reasons, but the Millennium Falcon is the spaceship.
It's iconic on a really intense level.
Yeah. Like, can anybody think of anything more iconic than... besides the Enterprise, maybe
the X-Wing starfighters?
Yeah, maybe X-Wings. Definitely not the TIE fighters, the Death Star, maybe, but that's a space station. That's not in this episode.
I mean, I would go with maybe Serenity?
Maybe.
But I think that's more niche.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't think every single person is aware of the Serenity, right? Yeah. Every single person is aware of...
Yeah. Again,
it is a serious problem to have, without a doubt.
I think everybody in the know, if given one of two ships to be on with its crew, any one ship to be on with its crew, they would choose the Serenity, I think, every time.
I'm sticking with the Enterprise D.
I think you meant between the Millennium Falcon and Serenity?
Between the Millennium Falcon.
Between those two, I'm going with the Serenity 10 times around. Yeah.
So Serenity is from Firefly, one of the most notable for its quality science fiction series out there. The writing is hilarious and brilliant. He's a leaf on the wind, watch how he soars, etc., etc., etc.
Well, I think one of the things that's notable about the show, which is very similar to why I love Moya from Farscape, is that while Serenity isn't alive in the same way, it is very much its own character.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very true. It features so prominently that...
It features so prominently. Its needs are important. You hear ship noises that have to do with how it's feeling and what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, the crew is attached, let's say. It is very, very attached to this particular ship, especially its captain, Malcolm Reynolds. Do you remember the name of the episode in which all of them evacuate the ship except Mal?
I want to say it's Out of Air or
Out of
something
Air,
like
yes,
that.
that's the name of the ship. The episode Out of Air in particular was a very moving episode. My personal experience with Serenity, Firefly as a whole, I was not a fan. I didn't know what the fuck it was. And then my friend Nathan duct taped me to a couch, and we watched the entire series and the movie all in one sitting. And I was a fan then. So that's what happened there. I have yet to get my revenge and duct tape him to a couch with the Lord of the Rings extended editions, but we're moving on.
Lord.
Yeah.
That may be a higher level of pain.
Well, at least for your eyes. But anyway, since we're talking about Lord of the Rings, I will take this particular opportunity to give an honorable mention to Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of ships in Lord of the Rings, but the big one is the Vingolot, which is not in Lord of the Rings. It's from the Silmarillion. It's very, very deep in the lore. It's one of the first things that Tolkien actually put to paper. Arundel was a mariner, the poem, and his ship was the Vingolot, which had wings and flies and is the North Star and shit and all kinds of crazy nonsense, because Lord of the Rings. Yes. So, since we've taken a hard left into fantasy...
Let's jump back to the original question.
Oh?
So
oh dear. I remember what I asked first. Oh no.
I think one of the most... If you stop and think about it, one of the most phallic ships one might come across is the Discovery 1.
Discovery 1 from 2001:
A Space Odyssey, yeah. It's literally a long, straight series of balls.
Yes, with one particularly large one at the very front. Yeah, so 2001: A Space Odyssey, we've got Stanley Kubrick in the house. I'm going to take another slight turn for a little...
But it should also be noted that Kubrick is not the only one involved in that. You actually have to go all the way back to Arthur C. Clarke, who actually wrote the book.
Yes, Arthur C. Clarke, one of the really, really big names in science fiction. I have a collected book of his works about this thick. I'm holding my fingers as far apart as I can, ladies and gentlemen. I have gotten through about a pinky of it. Like
there's quite a bit.
I don't enjoy him as much as Asimov.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his stuff, it can be a little dry.
Very, very fascinating, but it's dry.
It can be a little bit of a slog. The 2001 quadrilogy, there's 4 books there.
I honestly didn't know that there was a sequel to 2001 called 2010.
That was also a book, and it was also made into a movie.
I should mention that the movie 2010 does feature the same ship.
As I recall, they find it.
Well, since we did briefly talk about Kubrick here, I mean, it's one of the most, it's got some of the most iconic scenes in any science fiction. It's got Hal, of course, who is the quintessential evil AI.
It's got, I can't do that, Dave.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't let you do that. It's got the brilliant scene of the walk around the perimeter of the ship, or the interior perimeter, I should say.
Right.
But, since we're talking about Kubrick, I'm going to hard left segue here. And this is going to be a complicated one, because it involves Lord of the Rings, too. Because the first time they were going to adapt Lord of the Rings, they wanted Kubrick to direct. Do you know who they wanted to star?
I don't know, but I'm really disappointed that this didn't happen.
Yeah, no, Kubrick is the first person who said that Lord of the Rings could not be put to film, because he was going to flat out refuse. But it was actually Tolkien who put his foot down and just said no, because he didn't like the stars.
Really?
Yes, he was not a fan.
Who was it that he would have put his foot down over? I'm afraid to find out.
John, Ringo, George, and Paul.
He wanted to put the Beatles in it.
The Beatles were going to star. Kubrick didn't want to do it, but the studio who was going to try to get this made wanted Kubrick, and they wanted the Beatles.
Psychopaths of the highest order. Sociopaths,
yes.
Indeed.
I am so disappointed. I am so disappointed that this doesn't exist. But at the same time, am I really that disappointed?
I'm genuinely disappointed that Kubrick didn't get involved in this. I think a Tolkien-Kubrick union would have been mind-bogglingly awesome.
Well, I think the nearer miss is the more disappointing with not getting the Hobbits. But at the same time, I brought up the Beatles because there's a particular ship that they themselves get involved in.
Yes. The Yellow Submarine, which actually, what's great about that movie is some people, they wanted to make this animated film, and the Beatles went, sweet, we want nothing to do with it. This gets us out of the last movie we're supposed to make in our contract. Go for it. because they were done. They didn't want to make any more movies. And they ended up liking it a lot, like, at the end. And they have, like, one live-action sequence at the end with them, but they don't even voice their characters in the animation.
I see, and that's
Brilliant.
the one. That's the one with the big blue puff balls called the meanies. I think
the blue meanies.
I saw this once very briefly when I was a child.
The important is, of course, the titular Yellow Submarine, a flying yellow submarine that runs on nonsense. Like, every time, most of the movie is, we need to get where we're going and there's something wrong with the ship, and the answer is to hit random buttons and see what happens. At one point, they are underwater, and the ship, like, Ringo has accidentally been expelled from the ship because he hit a button that launched him out.
Because he's Ringo.
And he's being attacked by sea monsters.
Oh, dear.
Fake Native Americans riding sea monsters shooting arrows at him, in fact.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so
Okay, then.
the ship, like, part of it slides back while the top part stays there. A cavalry rides out of the ship on horses, grabs Ringo, rides back in, and it shuts.
Does
yeah,
anybody...
why not?
Do these cavalry ever reappear and, like,
No.
do they ever have a conversation with the Beatles?
No.
No. Why would they?
They're just kept in torpedo tubes or something?
Apparently. It is definitely bigger on the inside.
Yeah, no, this sounds like something, like, for all we know about the Beatles and all their press appearances and all that, the pictures circulating around the internet, this sounds exactly in the wheelhouse. They were snarky motherfuckers.
Oh, yes.
So since we talked briefly about a transforming ship, weirdly, this is a tenuous segue at best, let's talk about the Spaceball 1.
Oh, you beat me to that one.
Yes, Spaceballs. Mel Brooks, obviously brilliantly funny man. Spaceballs is probably his biggest movie. I don't know the exact numbers on that, but that's the one everybody watches.
It seems to be the one that's immediately well known.
Would have guessed Blazing Saddles.
Well, Blazing Saddles is definitely considered, like, probably his magnum opus as far as that's concerned. I would personally prefer Young Frankenstein myself, but
Of course.
Gene Wilder, I think, is a more fun character in that one. Yeah, with Spaceball 1, you got Pizza the Hut, Barf instead of Chewbacca. You've got Dark Helmet, one of Rick Moranis' best roles. Like,
I think it's his best role of all the ones that I've seen.
yeah, Spaceballs is just one of those. Plus, you know, it's tied in with Star Wars, and that automatically gives something another $100 grand.
As far as I'm concerned, that's what Star Wars should have been.
Oh.
I think that Mel Brooks saw that and was like, I can fix this.
You might not be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you know Mel Brooks used to write for Sid Caesar?
I did not.
No. Alright, so yes, the Spaceball 1, I should explain when we talk about transforming spaceships. It's the general basic Star Destroyer for most of the movie, and then it transforms into a giant maid. We're getting back to that first question I asked again.
Mega Maid.
I have an answer for your first question.
Oh dear, no. Go ahead.
So, defining ship as a pairing in fandom rather than a literal ship,
Ah, yeah.
I would happily get all up in between Marceline and Princess Bubblegum from
yes.
Adventure Time, which is the ship that they made canon, which makes me so happy.
I feel like...
aware that that was canon.
Oh, no, that's the last episode. It
No
became
kidding.
It's
canon.
heavily hinted at through a lot of other episodes.
Well,
but
of course, but hinting is not the same as
yeah,
doing.
Yeah, I
because
think it becomes explicit in the last episode.
sometimes as far as, for example, shipping goes, the author or the writer will retcon and go back and change things, which when it comes to representation is a real pain in the ass, because it's like, if they were, why didn't you show it? You're basically lying.
Well, I mean, that could be situational, right? Sometimes there's just a matter of, like, I wanted to do it, but the studio wouldn't let me. I wanted to do it. I was afraid what the fans would say. I wanted to do it. I thought the censors would get all over me.
Yeah. There's certain justifications some of the time.
I think most of the time you're probably right. Most of the time it's probably a cop-out where they...
For example, with Rowling and Dumbledore.
Oh, that's exactly where I was
By
thinking.
the time it was, like, the third book, she was a billionaire. She could have done whatever the fuck she wanted.
Yeah, there was no censor that was going to touch her at that point.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the reason that Bubbling didn't become canon until the very end was because when they started, they couldn't have gotten away with it, but things have changed since Adventure Time started, especially with Steven Universe changing what is and is not acceptable in children's cartoons.
We will not get into shipping in Steven Universe, I'm sorry.
Lars and Sadie.
That is a spider web. That is a quintessential private eye string and push pin map.
It gets a little more complicated when it starts to become a poly thing, right?
Oh, yes.
I mean, Steven Universe is definitely a poly thing.
Speaking of poly, I will make a brief honorable mention here as far as that type of shipping goes to Polygrums. And that's it. That's the honorable mention. Figure out what it is for yourself.
I've got one that maybe you guys don't know. Bodacious Space Pirates.
Bodacious Space Pirates. What the fuck is that?
It is an anime about a high school girl who ends up finding out that she is the heir to one of the last few pirate ships in the universe. And she has to take over as its captain, but her ship, the Benton Maru, is not my favorite from the show. It is a retired pirate ship that came into the ownership of her high school, the Odette II, which is a solar sailor of significant size. When it launches, it doesn't look all that impressive, but once it unfurls its sails, it is magical.
Oh, okay.
It starts out as your fairly straightforward rocket ship kind of design, just a simple conical, cylindrical type of thing, but it unfurls these beautiful sails in all directions. They're gold pearlescent sails. They're huge. Right. They end up building this spider web-ish design around the ship.
When did this particular
and it takes off.
When did this particular anime come out?
Ooh,
the reason
I would have to double check. I want to say 2009, somewhere in there.
Because when you talk about sails unfurling and gold pearlescence and all that, the ship that comes to mind for me is the RSS Legacy from Treasure Planet. Yeah, I think is a highly underrated animated film. It's a retelling of, whatever the name of Long John Silver's book is. Treasure Island. Yes, thank you. Hey, sometimes shit falls out of my head. Anyway, so it's a retelling of Treasure Island. I really like some of the great animation with, for example, the mechanical arm that this version of Silver has, and all the sails in this particular show, which have this sort of digital, blocky texture to them, and then this just sheen of gold across the front, and they look amazing.
I vaguely remember that one and being quite impressed with it.
Here, I've got a picture right here. So do you have a definite date on that, or?
I pulled up February 2014. I did not realize. It was very, very good. There actually is a lesbian couple in the show that kind of pops out of nowhere, and it doesn't feel shoehorned. They just drop it on you in such an unexpected way that you're like, oh, that's a thing.
While we're still on the topic of spaceships, I wanted to bring up the Heart of Gold from Hitchhiker's Guide. Oh, did I beat you to it? Was that another one?
That's another one.
I mean, you beat everybody to that one. That's a big one that I'm sure we all wanted to get to.
And in particular, the Improbability Drive is the coolest damn thing.
Perfection. Just the ultimate way of traveling the universe.
Yeah, no, go ahead and explain that.
Rather than bothering with actually traveling, it calculates... It's the probability of any particular place, and then just rapid fire goes through any place it could potentially be in the universe. And
at a certain point, it is everywhere simultaneously. Everywhere in every conceivable version of every conceivable universe simultaneously.
So there's a picture of the sails for the RSS Legacy.
That is very cool.
Yeah, but anyhow, so yes, the Improbability Drive and all that nonsense.
The Infinite Improbability
Infinite
Drive.
Improbability
Finite
Drive.
Improbability Drive is simply used to get things started at a party by causing the hostess's undergarments to simultaneously leap 1 foot to the left.
I feel like you're quoting something. Yeah, I know.
The book.
I know you're quoting the book, but you said it like a quote, so I'm commenting.
It's not word for word, but yeah, it is from the book.
Yeah, so if we're talking about certain ship engines being interesting, I personally love the shit out of Futurama. And when we figure out how the ship engine in Futurama works, it's deliciously absurd, because it doesn't move, it moves the universe around it.
But fun fact, they undoubtedly got that from reality.
Well, not everybody, obviously. the writers for Futurama are a bunch of actual...
They're very, very intelligent people. They're all Harvard educated for the most part, I believe.
Some of them have PhDs, some of them don't. There's actually a paper that came out of writing for Futurama. In the particular episode where they all swap bodies, but are unable to swap directly back to their own body, they had to figure out whether or not it was possible for them to... Well, they didn't have to do this, but because they're nerds, they did it.
Because they're nerds, they did, of course.
So they had to figure out, well, is it possible for them all to get back in the bodies? And they sort of went home on this, and then one of them came in the next day, kicked down the door, and said, "I've formulated a theorem." And they made a paper on it, so...
It's beautiful. Well, if we're speaking about papers related to the matter, there actually is a set of scientific theory. It is based on warp drive from Star Trek.
Right.
But it does describe basically exactly how the Planet Express ship works. It's, if you want to look up Miguel Alcubierre and the Alcubierre drive, it is on the very edge of the realm of realistic possibility. It would require a tremendous amount of energy. But the idea is that you actually warp the fabric of reality into a wave that a ship is then able to ride.
Interesting.
So the ship is not in fact moving, but it's warping reality around itself
in such a sequence as to cause it to be somewhere else.
Basically push it somewhere else in the universe. So it doesn't violate the laws of reality, the laws of physics, by exceeding the speed of light. It just was there, now it's there, reality moved, and it did not.
That is probably the most poetic form of a spaceship moving that I can think of.
I always think of it as surfing reality.
Yeah. And since we're still on papers and scientific papers and science fiction, I'll make a brief honorable mention here to Interstellar, because the black hole from Interstellar was so meticulously simulated that they were actually able to learn a lot about black holes from that movie. Yeah. And again, it's got PhD scientists working as scientific advisors and all of that nonsense. Let's talk about some actual sailboats and actual water for a moment. Actually, no, let's talk about this because we'll get right back into anime from this. So there's obviously the quintessential sailing anime, One Piece. Back in the day, it was considered one of the big three anime, which were the triangle of Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece. Two of those have thus far ended, but One Piece is still going with upwards of 900 chapters.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's actually was the first of the three to start, was it not?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, so One Piece, for anybody who might be remotely interested and not actually checked it out yet, One Piece is pirates with superpowers. That's it. That's the entire premise. And it's goofy fun a lot of the time. I wouldn't blame you if you don't slog through all 900 chapters of the manga or all 500 or so chapters of the episodes of the anime. I'll get a clean take eventually.
I think you can actually jump to when they forgetting the word for it, but they actually move into like a different part of the world.
The new world.
And you can jump to that part and basically just pick up from there and you're fine.
It's a significant enough change to where it's basically a different anime. Yeah. Anyway, we can do a quick list of honorable mentions for ships in anime.
You gotta make sure you cover Yamato, Arcadia, and Bebop.
No. We're gonna give those a bit more screen time. Basically. Because this list of honorable mentions is anime I haven't personally seen a lot of the time. Like, I've seen Bebop, seen a little bit of Yamato. But Mazinger Z, there's actually, if you watch enough Gurren Lagann, there is a starship-esque thing that used to be the moon in Gurren Lagann. We gotta talk a little bit about Gundam. And this will be an honorable mention here because there are so many spaceships in Gundam because it's the space mecha anime. It's gonna happen. The only one I watched is probably one without a lot of spaceships in it, which was Wing, which is the popular one in the United States, the least popular one in Japan. And I'll probably just go ahead and mention here the first spaceship flagship doohickey ship in Gundam, which is White Base. And then we've got, should I mention Magic Knight Rayearth or Fate Zero?
Fate and Magic Knight Rayearth are both pretty big.
Okay, so Magic Knight Rayearth has a battleship. Yeah, several battleships, for example. One shaped like a magic lamp, another shaped like a Chinese dragon. And then Fate Zero has the Vimana, or Chariot of the Gods. But yeah, so we should probably talk about the Yamato. Who is the Yamato?
I love the Yamato. So the Yamato of the anime is based on a real sailing ship.
Yes.
An aircraft carrier, I believe, from World War II. Also called the Yamato, was an actual Japanese ship.
Yes, we should probably title drop at this point and say this is the anime of the same title, Space Battleship Yamato.
Correct. Which actually is a reminder that it was not a carrier, it was a battleship. So the Yamato of the anime is the space-going version of the ship. They look very much the same, actually. If you built a model of each of them and put them next to each other, the only real differences, as I recall, are in the aft section, in the drive section. And the front end, of course.
Right.
On the Yamato, obviously, is not on the space-going Yamato is not on the sea-going Yamato. But it's a stellar ship. It has an insanely powerful both main weapon and an insanely powerful drive system. It can jump between galaxies in, I believe, a matter of months, years. So it's a very, very fast ship. And also it just has insane firepower. It's wiped out armadas with one shot of that main cannon.
I did look up a picture of it before we got this started, and it is just spackled with guns. I'm going to talk for a moment about Zeppelins now.
Ooh.
Zeppelins are fun in their various iterations. That's where we get airships and a lot of the more steampunk variations of everything. I'm going to get back to Larry Correia's writing here. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm just going to call it Correia. It's spelled weird. Anyway, so he has a crime noir, fantasy, magic-y series of novels called Hard Magic, which is deliciously euphemistic, and probably the name of the main character's Dick. Anyway, there's various Zeppelins in there. There's various Zeppelins. You even get Zeppelins in episodes of Archer, for example, with the episode Skytanic having the Excelsior luxury aircraft thingy, doohickey. I'm going to say doohickey, apparently, this episode. But my personal favorite iteration of the Zeppelin is in the anime Hellsing. Are you familiar, sir?
I've seen bits of the anime. I am not familiar with them.
Okay, so this is spoilers. This is a spoilery podcast. Deal with it.
I mean, the show's old enough at this point.
Yes. Can you tell me who the main villain of Hellsing is by the end of the series?
Well, I'm just gonna stab in the dark and say Dracula.
No, he's the hero.
Ah.
Yeah.
I had heard that as a rumor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I'm at a loss.
Okay. Who is that? Sorry.
If it's who I think it is, I know he's voiced by Taliesin Jaffe, but Jaffe.
Taliesin Jaffe, one of our favorite voice actors. The main villain of Hellsing is goddamn hilarious and perfect. It's Nazis.
Of course it is.
It's Nazis. So the main villain being Nazis, we have a series of Graf Zeppelin in the final battle of the series. The flagship Zeppelin, captained by the insidious Major, that's the only name we know him by in the series, is the Deus Ex Machina, which, if you actually watch the anime, is hilarious in itself. If you don't want to watch Hellsing, I highly recommend the abridged series on YouTube by Team 4-Star. Takahata 101 is a goddamn glorious Alucard, who is the title character of the fucking Hellsing. It's great. It's dumb and great. It's a lot of blood. So much blood. Everywhere.
So I've seen.
More blood than people could possibly be filled with. Anyway, yeah, so Zeppelins, there you go.
Well, if you're going to talk about rigid airships...
Kinky.
In whatever form they may be...
We're getting back to that first question again, aren't we?
Not necessarily. I think it's important that we touch on, of course, the Prydwen.
The Prydwen?
The head airship of the Brotherhood of Steel from the Fallout series.
Fallout.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. You two talk about this because... By God, I have not played Fallout ever.
I do not want to have sex with the Prydwen, but I do want to fuck it up because fuck that iteration of the Brotherhood of Steel.
Yeah, the Brotherhood of Steel, they're obviously a very problematic group. Their belief system is troubling, to say the least.
The DC Brancher bros.
So I've only played New Vegas and 4, and the Brotherhood of Steel in New Vegas are difficult, but not intensely problematic. the Fallout 4 Brotherhood of Steel is more problematic, without a doubt.
And they have an airship?
And they have a stellar airship. Again, it's called the Pridwin. If you get a chance and you haven't played the game, I don't know why you haven't played the game, first off, but...
I do hear tell of an expansion for that game called Far Harbor.
That's correct.
Is there a ship involved?
I haven't dug too much in on what I suggest we refer to as Far Harbor, considering the game takes place mostly in Massachusetts, but Far Harbor is actually in Maine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't played the expansion yet.
You people are useless to me.
I think it's the only one of the expansions I haven't dug in on. All the other ones I've invested time into. That's the only one I haven't gotten into.
So as somebody who hasn't played, but has watched people play it, I can let everybody know that yes, there's a ship involved. Kind of. In a certain way it's involved, let's say.
It doesn't surprise me. I know that it takes very much on the seashore.
I'll go ahead and let the two of you know that you get to Far Harbor via ship. Basically a ship bullet that's fired at Far Harbor.
So it's like the... Oh, crap. What's the name of the Fallout 3? There's an expansion in Fallout 3 where you go to the swamp and you take a ship to the swamp. But, I mean, not even really a ship. It's more like a little boat. But that's, like, the only time you do anything with that boat.
Well, yeah, but this one is a little bit more bombastic than that. It's a gigantic ship that you are essentially flying to Far Harbor, but it's catastrophic, let's say.
Oh, is the Chinese submarine with the ghoul in 4 or 3? I know he exists. I don't recall it from 4. But I've never actually interacted with him.
I don't recall it from 4. I did remember there is one other ship in Fallout 4. It is a real ship, the USS Constitution. It is in less impressive shape when you encounter it in 4.
I'm receiving a frowny face from Morgan.
Doing that quest, I made my ghoul husband mad because I sided with the robots.
See, I didn't dig in on that one. I know that the ship itself, not at all a notable spoiler. It is supposed to be in the water, but when you find it, it is definitely not.
It is crashed on land and being crewed by a bunch of robots who have gone decidedly wrong. Yes. Yeah. And so you can either help the robots get their ship back in shape and moving, or you can help the scavvers that want to take the tech on the ship so that they can, like, make their living.
Sure.
And, you know, the only person I have left from my original life is Cogsworth, so of course I have a soft spot for AI.
Yeah, that's fair. Given the choice, I would go the same way, without a doubt.
Yeah, I don't know. Hancock yelled at me, and he made some good points about how, you know, these people need to make a living.
I mean, we're still talking about, like, basically what Hancock is saying in that moment is that machines will always be less than. We should just treat them as slaves, right? They're objects to be torn apart when the time comes.
Shitty and kind of out of character for him, considering his background with ghouls.
Yeah, Hancock's a character I haven't dug in on, but from what I know about... Yeah, he's definitely one that I've been meaning to get around to. I know that, you know, his story is rather emotional.
Yeah.
So, since we're on derelicts now, let's talk a little bit about ghost ships for half a second here. We've got Thriller Bark, which is a ship from One Piece. Again, every nautical trope under the sun is going to be in the giant, enormous, long manga and anime about pirates. But Thriller Bark is not only a ghost ship, it is literally a theme park floating on the ocean, sort of a horror funhouse type dealie. But the ghost ship I really want to talk about is from Venture Brothers. So in episode 6 of season 1, Ghosts of the Sargasso, I don't think... Spoilers for a comedy show on Adult Swim don't really matter that much. But yeah, so they go to this ship that's ostensibly being haunted by ghost pirates and find out that, no, it's not ghost pirates, it's just dudes dressed up as ghost pirates like an episode of Scooby-Doo. Probably the closest the Venture Brothers actually comes to Hank and... What's his brother's name?
Dean?
Yeah, Hank and Dean actually doing their Hardy Boys shtick. But they actually do find a ghost eventually. It's just not from pirates. Yeah. So it's
from the other ghost ship.
Yeah, it's from the other ghost ship, and it's is it a ship or is it a spacecraft? It's a spacecraft, right?
I mean, it's still we've been counting spacecrafts as ships.
Well, we've been for me personally, for it to be called a ship, this is my personal definition. This should by no means be anyone else's. It needs a deck or a bridge or something. So.
And this was more like a little pod.
Yeah, this was more like a fighter or But yes, so. Venture Brothers, amazing and hilarious in its early days. It's getting a little long in the tooth at the moment, but one of my favorite episodes.
Since we're talking about comedic ghost ships, we would be remiss if we didn't, of course, touch on the Flying Dutchman of SpongeBob fame.
I was going to interrupt you there and say, yes, the Flying Dutchman from Old English mythology. No, the one from SpongeBob.
And technically, we're kind of talking about the same thing.
I'm the Flying Dutchman. Yeah, no, the Flying Dutchman is a person, and in the fucking SpongeBob-y thingy, it is also a ghostman. And he captains his ghostman ship underwater.
Yeah.
And SpongeBob antics ensue, as they always do.
They always do.
Does anybody else want to talk about a ghost ship? Because ghost ships appear in, pretty much anything that has regular ships in it. There's an episode of Firefly we mentioned before called Bushwhacked, which has a ship where everybody on it is already dead. And we, creepy. And all that sort of thing. There's a prominent one in The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Another one of those series that hits on whichever series of tropes it hits on for that particular game. This one is on the ocean, naturally. And there's a pirate ship level. There's, a ghost pirate ship level that you have to go through and kill all the ghoulies and whatnot. What's interesting is this ghost ship is constantly present as you're playing the game. It'll just appear and disappear and appear and disappear and vanish before your eyes and all of that nonsense. The ship I really want to mention from Wind Waker, though, is of course the King of Red Lines, which is a ship and a character, and he talks at you in a very frightening manner because he's the prow, the figurehead of the ship, and he just whips around and talks at you right here, and it's good. Fun. Wind Waker's a good game that didn't get enough credit when it came out, but since the HD edition came out and they fixed a lot of the problems with the original game, it's gotten a lot more popular. I'll stick on Zelda for a moment, because I just bought Breath of the Wild.
Ooh.
And there's a series of mechanical animals that you have to go through that are also function as dungeons. And the one I'll choose to count as a ship for now is Va Medoa, I believe is its name. And it is a bird, and so it's flying through the sky, and I will count that as it being a ship. Me and Matt both have a love of the old comedy movie Down Periscope.
Yes.
And so we would be out of line if we didn't talk a little bit about the ship, the Stingray, which is not called the Stingray in real life, but was a real submarine that they shot on for the movie.
Yep, and I'm reminding myself right now of what that ship is called. The USS Pompanito, which actually is moored in San Francisco, right by us.
Yeah.
I spent the night on it with my Girl Scout troop once.
Well, aren't you the luckiest? I've never had the opportunity. I haven't actually been on the Pompanito, which is immensely disappointing to me. I buy it.
I haven't either, but
I've not been on it.
Yeah, I haven't, but my great uncle was in the Navy, so I was on the USS Dragon Ball Z. Kidding. It's the USS Kamehameha, which is naturally a Hawaiian king, not a beam weapon of anime fame. We talked a lot about anime ships on this episode because there's a lot of ships in anime. We haven't talked about one yet, and it's the big one. It's the Bebop.
That's a big one.
Yeah,
it's definitely a big one.
I'd argue it is the big one.
I think as anime ships go, it's probably...
As anime ships go, especially in America, because so many people dip their toes in anime because of Cowboy Bebop. It's just the music, the artwork, and all that. Basically the two things you need for a good anime. Well, maybe a story.
The story. Optional. And the story for Bebop is...
Story optional.
The writing on that show is incredible.
Yeah, and so, on the Bebop, you've got the Captain Jet Black, you've got Spike Spiegel, you've got Ein, you've got Ed, you've got Faye?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I got all the characters, I'm good. I don't have to rewatch the series in shame.
But you should rewatch it for fun.
Yeah. So I just don't have to be crying while I'm doing it.
That's true.
That's optional. But anyway, so the Bebop is a former fishing trawler that Jet Black bought and repurposed as... What's their job again?
They are bounty hunters.
Bounty hunters, yes. Oh, there you go.
Or for the purposes of the anime, Space Cowboys.
Yes, Space Cowboys. Same deal with Serenity, because if you haven't heard one of the all-time greatest tropes, just for being so off the wall, Firefly also has the Space Cowboy thing, and if you never listened to the theme for Firefly, you probably should.
In fairness,
my love, take my land, take me where I cannot stay.
In fairness,
the only country song I like.
In Bebop, it's just another word for bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Whereas in Firefly,
it's literally cowboys. Yeah,
actually cowboys.
The Wild West of the outer rim of habitation in space. But yeah. Another anime ship.
Let me cram one more in here. The Arcadia.
The Arcadia.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Arcadia.
So the Arcadia is the ship of Space Pirate Harlock. Captain Harlock is just the name of the... Or Space Pirate Captain Harlock is the name of the movie, but just Captain Harlock is the name of the original show, which actually debuted in the early 80s. For a lot of people, I think it's kind of fallen by the wayside. I think it's really a very interesting show, and the movie is a good place to start if you're not super familiar with it, any taste. But the Arcadia is definitely a ship that I personally love. It's got a lot of that same... its traditional design is very much like the Yamato, where it has elements of a Earth boat.
Yes.
It's got that aft deck that stands up back there looks like it's made out of wood. It almost looks like somebody could stand up there and hold the wheel and steer the thing.
Yeah.
Obviously that's not going to happen since you're in space, but you know, it's got those big cannons on it that you would expect on a battleship.
Yeah, and this is a pet peeve a lot of people actually have with spaceships, is spaceships being built like Earth planes or Earth ships or things like that, because that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
It really doesn't.
For space.
Yeah.
I mean, but for the ones that really get me with that are the ones in Battlefleet Gothic, which will get a brief honorable mention here, because it's the tabletop space battle simulator game thing for Warhammer 40k. Boy, oh boy, are those ships bedecked with spikes. Like, spikes everywhere. It's really where the term Gothic comes from as far as their design motif. Very, very not makey sensey ships. But they look cool, which is the important thing. Because, you know, they're not actually having a space. You had one more ship you wanted to talk about, right? Or did you decide you didn't want to talk about Aya?
Oh, well, you know what? The ship itself is pretty cool, too. Aya is the AI that controls the Interceptor. I think that's what it's called. I could be wrong. Which is the ship from the Green Lantern cartoon, which is, I believe, the first ship, at least in that universe, to be powered by a Green Lantern battery.
Okay.
And so when Aya leaves the ship, she's basically some mechanical parts and a bunch of green energy. And she's cool.
She's cool?
Yeah, she navigates the ship, and then she falls in love with their Red Lantern.
That Red Lantern buddy. Yes.
Their prisoner that they're trying to make not be a shitlord anymore.
That is the technical term for a Red Lantern, yes.
And then she tries to destroy the universe because he decides he doesn't love her back.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
That tends to happen. That happens with Planet Express ship too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's not the best episode, but anyway.
I've got a fun on the topic of...
Does she ever say, I'm afraid I can't let you do that, as all ship AIs do after 2001 A Space Odyssey? Because Planet Express ship sure does.
I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen the series.
Because, well, Planet Express ship was more of a direct parody of HAL rather than... Yeah, more of a direct parody of HAL than a lot of other things are. We still have so many ships we haven't gone over. Like, we haven't talked about Magic the Gathering!
No.
Yes, so Magic the Gathering... has a ship in it. A very important ship to the lore of Magic the Gathering. And by gods, if you ever want to watch time disappear and wake up next year and have Beardly, what year is it moments, you just dive into the wiki for the lore for Magic the Gathering. They've been writing it for 40 years. They have not stopped writing it at any point. But the Weatherlight is a flying ship captained by Gerard and populated by various planeswalkers. And if you play Magic the Gathering, you'll know what that means. If you don't play Magic the Gathering, it's not important. There's a goblin.
Your explanation of what a planeswalker is will vary depending on when you have played that game. If you played it in the past,
yes,
it will be different from if you play it now.
Yes.
Because it used to be that you were the planeswalker. Now it's a card in your deck.
Yes. Now it's a card in your deck because you can actually play all the various planeswalkers because people writing Magic the Gathering like writing characters. Imagine that. Yeah, no, you've got Karn the Silver Golem. You've got Squee the Goblin, who I don't think is an actual planeswalker, but he's Squee.
I think Squee might actually capacity to be a planeswalker.
Okay, it's been a while because
it's also been a while for me. I'm trying to scrape
this. I was gonna say this particular point of the continuity for Magic the Gathering is decades old, but the Weatherlight, which is the name of the ship, if I haven't mentioned it already, is pretty iconic as far as Magic the Gathering as a whole is concerned, and deals with the dread Phyrexian invasion. And Yawgmoth and Phyrexia are some of my favorite villains in any particular piece of media, but that's a different episode now, isn't it? Yeah, so we talked about the Weatherlight briefly, we talked about Planet Express ship, we talked about Dirber.
About cramming it.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to cram in just a quick one here. Mm-hmm. As a child, I managed to get my hands on a game that I don't think most people are aware ever existed. Mm. It's called Hellbender. It's a very cool ship. If you get a chance, look it up. Mm-hmm. I believe this is the model here. That was the first game I played. You know, we actually had a joystick, a flight stick that we used to play it. Mm-hmm. So it was the first game where I got a real comprehension of the fact that in space, direction has much less meaning. Mm-hmm. When you're flying around the surface of the planet, it totally makes sense that you're in this winged ship and you're flying around, and it makes sense. Once you fly above the clouds out into space, direction pretty much loses all meaning.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize things like, it doesn't matter that this ship has wings. It could be whatever shape it wants to, and it would have the same impact.
It could be a giant mechanical made with a vacuum, for example.
Exactly, yeah.
While we're talking video games, there's the Clattery Heart from Sunless Sea. In Sunless Sea and its connected games, Fallen London and
Sunless
Skies, London has fallen into this sort of... It's fallen underground.
Okay, so it's not the Morgan Freeman.
It's very much kind of gaslamp fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of steam, but more fantasy than steampunk.
And very Lovecrafty. Yes.
So
non-Euclidean.
London is controlled.
Antediluvian. Sorry, go ahead.
London is controlled by the Bazaar. There are a bunch of scary eldritch people that are parts of that Bazaar. Mr. Iron is the only one I'm remembering right now.
Salt?
Salt is a god. They're different.
And giant enemy crabs, yes.
Yes. But the Bazaar is also its own entity. Mm-hmm. And the Clattery Heart is a ship that is made from the heart of the Bazaar, which was carved out by the mother of one of the potential ship doctors that you can pick up when you're playing. Mm-hmm. And you have to go through her quest line to unlock it and find out what happened to it. And it's a real neat ship. There's, instead of your normal wake, there's blood dripping, because it's a heart, but also a ship. And
I can assume that attracts giant enemy crabs.
I mean, all of the ships do that.
Oh, well, yeah. But, I should mention here that Sunless Sea is probably the best slow-paced game I've ever seen. I'm an action game player. I couldn't get very far in it, but it's got some of the best writing, some of the best lore. It's so, to not make nautical puns, deep. But, yeah, it's a great game. The atmosphere is amazing. If that's your pace. It's unfortunately, as far as games goes, not my personal pace, but I think it's worth a look.
What I recommend is listening to a podcast or something else while you're doing the actual sailing bits, and then you can pause it when you get to dock and get to actually interact with story.
Yeah, it has a lot of the same problems as Wind Waker did back in the day, where getting from place to place is a bit tedious.
But it's also,
for lack of a better,
kind of an important part of the game, because managing your supplies and not getting stranded at sea is a big part of it. And also getting stranded at sea can open some interesting story options.
Yes, and you can't exactly do the Oregon Trail thing where you watch an animation and then it has a pop-up. It does have these pop-ups that come up, but you have to also pilot your ship and not run into shit, like giant enemy crabs.
Or, chase around pirate ships to make sure you stay behind them so you can kill them before they kill you.
Yes.
I think, and I'm surprised that it took me this long, we would be remiss if we didn't at least touch on the SS Anne.
Oh, the SS Anne, yes. Wow, I can't believe I forgot about the SS Anne.
For those that don't remember, the SS Anne is a story-critical ship from the original Pokemon games, Red, Blue, and Yellow.
Yeah, it's got the gentleman who's vomiting, whose back you have to rub. It's got a battle with your rival, whatever you named him, Nutsack.
I think that's a pretty standard one.
Smeagolborp.
Yeah.
And or Gary Oak. Yes.
You don't actually get to ride on the ship, though.
No, you don't. It's
sort of disappointing. It's when you get off of it
that it actually leaves.
Yeah. That's when the story gets to progress.
Yeah, but you explore the various decks. You fight a lot of drunk sailors. And
there's a
nauseated
lot
people.
of great items on board that you can pick up along the way.
Yes, and it has the story-critical move to challenge the third gym leader and all that. But what's important is not the SS Anne, it's the truck in front of the SS Anne. What? It's important.
Okay, dear.
If you move it, you get Mew. Just like everybody said in 4th grade, right? Yes. Yes, the SS Anne. I can't believe I forgot about that. Let me look up my list again. Oh, yes. So we talked earlier in the podcast about movie ships. We didn't talk about the Orca either. Captain Quint's ship in Jaws. I'll leave it with an honorable mention here because the ship itself is just, it's just a trawler. I don't know what kind of ship it is. Don't come at me with your nautical knowledge.
Do come at us with your nautical knowledge so that we then have nautical knowledge too.
Okay, well, see, I'm not familiar with this particular ship.
The Orca? From Jaws? Have you not seen Jaws?
I have actually not seen Jaws.
Heresy!
I know, it's horrifyingly bad mistake. That's a pretty standard fishing ship based on the picture I'm looking at.
Basically, and like I said, it doesn't have as much of an important part in the... it takes them to where the shark is and floats for long enough for a couple of them to not get eaten, let's say. Yeah, no, the other ship that I should definitely mention from Jaws, and if you haven't seen Jaws, this isn't going to make much sense, but the Indianapolis. Wow, I flubbed that. The Indianapolis, which is the ship that while Quint was in the Navy was on board, and those of you unfamiliar with the Indianapolis, it was sunk, and sharks happened, let's say. Which is why Quint wants to get his revenge on sharks as a whole, and thus hunts them. Anything you want to say about Jaws? About how you were spooked by the capsized ship?
I certainly was.
Yes, no, my favorite thing to do, as far as watching Jaws goes, is wait for a specific moment in the movie where everyone jumps. And it's the most fun. You should always watch Jaws with somebody who hasn't seen it yet. Especially if they're small. I'm kidding, mostly. If we talk about movie ships, we gotta talk about the Black Pearl, obviously.
Can't miss it.
Yeah, can't miss it, can't get the song out of your head. All that. Black Pearl is the ship from Pirates of the Caribbean, captained by Jack Sparrow. Captain Jack Sparrow. I think, well, at times, yes. I think the later movies have actually caused everybody to kind of forget how really, really good that first one is. Like, it's a really good movie, especially... Okay, Pirates of the Caribbean, Black Pearl gets an honorable mention. It's neat. Does anybody want to talk about the shipping thing? Why he's a pirate? You don't know why Jack Sparrow's a pirate? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I do.
This is a throwaway line in one of the later movies. The villain of the later movies sunk the Black Pearl originally because Jack made off with the cargo, which was a cargo of people. Jack liberated these slaves and then got his ship sunk by, I guess, the East Indian Trading Company or whatever it's called.
That sounds vaguely right.
Yeah. So
I believe they actually...
Yeah, and so then he has to make a deal with Davy Jones and that version of the Flying Dutchman to unsink his ship for him. But it is black and charred, and so he renames it the Black Pearl. I don't know if that's actually canon or not, but the internet told me so. So there you go.
There is a line in the movie where
people aren't cargo, mate, is the only line. Yeah. But as far as everything else goes, it's pretty much conjecture. It's pretty, got some solid evidence to back it up. But
I have another ship that is crewed by undead.
Oh.
The Black Freighter from the Black Freighter comics within Watchmen.
Oh, yes.
Which I think they're pretty neat, just because
they're specifically congruent as far as panels and everything goes with the rest of the Watchmen story. Watchmen is one of the masterpieces of comics.
And even just within the Black Freighter comic within Watchmen, just the way that they have their new crew member go insane and drive him to do all of the awful things that he's expecting them to do, so that he comes back and joins them willingly because he realizes that he deserves it, is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, no, and of course I gotta, being the artist, I gotta talk about how all of the panels are mirrored with each other. All the colors are in a sort of mirror layout a lot of the time. It's, like I said, it's a goddamn masterpiece. The movie, however, not as good. But
I remember liking the Black Freighter cartoon. I don't know how good it actually was, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. But the only other thing I'll mention about Watchmen, there's another ship that gets the honorable mention. The Owl ship.
Archie.
Which is nicknamed Archie and captained, or piloted, I guess, is more appropriate in this case, by the ostensible Owlman. Isn't that the wrong
Night
adjective?
Owl.
Night Owl?
Night Owl.
Oh. What's
Owlman is evil Batman.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes. I'm mixing my comics. Mixing my mythologies. But
I've got here's a fun one. I don't know if you
The
guys
Nautilus.
I don't know if you guys have read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
I've seen League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's the same thing, right?
I believe it is actually.
No, it's the same ship, but
Yeah.
that was a nonsensical joke.
Yeah.
I personally, I'm a fan of bad movies, as I've previously stated. So
Many people are. It seems to be a growing
Yeah.
subset of the film fandom.
Yeah, and I'd say League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a good bad movie. I haven't read many of the comics, but I don't know as to their quality.
They certainly
Only
have their
read
following,
like
I
the
believe.
first one.
Yeah.
It was okay.
Yep. So the
but
Nautilus,
The Nautilus. Yeah.
early forays into nautical literature.
Yeah. I recall when I was listening to the book, because I'm the kind of person that listens to books instead of reading them, the description sounded specious at best.
Oh.
As though perhaps it might have been written before submarines were a thing.
Yeah, no, it's basically a torpedo, kind of.
Yeah, it really is, and the sizing of it is totally unrealistic. It's one of those that's bigger on the inside,
Yeah.
kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Should
still a very interesting ship.
Now that poses a question: do we count the TARDIS as a ship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it qualifies.
Do y'all
I
wanna
think
talk
it's
about the
right
TARDIS?
on the edge of qualifying, but it qualifies.
Yeah. Y'all want to talk about the TARDIS for a minute? Because I'm not a Doctor Who.
I'm
mate.
also not a big Doctor Who fan.
I am also not a Doctor Who person.
Wow.
Abandoned ship.
We don't like Star Wars. We don't like Doctor Who. I think we've just lost all of our geek cred.
I don't dislike
this-
Doctor Who. I just haven't seen that much of
Yeah,
it.
and I
I
like.
haven't seen much, but what I have seen has been not bad, but hasn't impressed me.
Well, of course, it's supposed to be kind of cheesy,
Sure.
and cheap.
Have you seen the Van Gogh sequence?
The Van Gogh
I
sequence.
have,
That's
yeah.
famous.
I mean, that's going to be heartbreaking for anyone, especially if you're an art fan, which I happen to be.
and of course, I Don't Want to Go is one of the
Yeah.
more famous scenes in television dramatic-y things, and
Yeah.
David Tennant is a goddamned gift from God, obviously.
Are You My Mummy is also a fantastic episode. I don't think it's actually called that, but
Yeah, the only episodes of Doctor Who I've seen are like the first 12 of the 9th Doctor, or the 9th season. I think it's the 6th season, 9th Doctor. I don't fucking know. I don't know. But anyway, first 12 episodes of the reboot, let's say, and then I've also seen Don't Blink. Go ahead.
I've seen a sprinkling of Doctor Who episodes from the very old to the rather new. Not bad. Not bad. Just not for me.
Yeah. One of my favorite actors is a former Doctor, who is Sylvester McCoy. Yeah, so Sylvester McCoy, who also plays Radagast in the Hobbit movies that everybody hates, and particularly hates that character because he has bird shit dripping down his face and he's supposed to be a wizard. Yes, no, he's fine. I like Radagast, and obviously Sylvester McCoy is a phenomenal character actor, but also plays with spoons on set. Yeah. Yeah, so that's our brief foray into Doctor Who, because none of us actually know that much about it.
Nope.
Oh dear. TARDIS counts as a ship. There you go.
Let's throw in another literature one here. The Red October.
Red October.
I don't know. Probably none of us have
with
read
the
the
Scottish
book.
Russian, yes.
Yeah,
that's
I don't think any of us have read the book, but I've seen the movie multiple times.
Yes, from the movie, it's a very important plot point that Russian is Scottish.
Yeah, it totally is.
I don't know if the fucking shit. I know so little about the Red October that I think that fucking Red October is full with Russians. I have no idea.
It is, yeah.
Okay, good. At least I have that.
It is a Russian sub whose commanding officer has managed to convince his crew to defect to America.
Oh, okay.
And so he's actually supposed to be Russian, and he's trying to make his way to America to defect, but the Americans think that he's on his way to America to attack.
Naturally.
So he has to manage to navigate his way across the Atlantic safely, and somehow convince the Americans he's not trying to kill them; he's trying to be their friend.
Yeah. Which naturally the Americans would say, okay, fine, if you're our friend, let us shoot at you.
Yeah, sure, why not?
That's how America greets its... I'm not going to get off this topic. Abandoned topic!
The Satellite of Love.
The Satellite of Love. What you talking about?
That is the ship that Mystery Science Theater 3000 takes place upon.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Which is weird, because I'm
I had to look up the name of the ship just now, but is a good ship.
Yeah, because I thought they were trapped on the moon. Or, no, it's the evil people who are on the moon. Okay, yeah. Right. Yeah, no, MST3K is awesome. The people who made MST3K unfortunately didn't have the rights to it. Or, sorry, the people who starred in MST3K and wrote for it and all that didn't have the rights to it, so they had to make their own thing. And if you want to support those guys, go and watch or buy some riff tracks, which is just them having audio over movies, and that's pretty much it. It's fucking great. Like,
were they completely uninvolved with the new series?
I believe I would have to look it up. They might have asked them to come back, but I don't know. But yes, the new series also has Patton Oswalt on it, so you should totally support that too, as well as Felicia Day, and if you like him, Jonah Ray.
I think I got another critical one.
The Argo?
The Dawn Treader.
The Dawn Treader. Okay, so this one's not critical for me because, again, it's one of those things where I'm not a fan of Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, as a kid, I loved them, read the whole series. It's actually now been long enough that I don't remember a lot of the details, but...
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it's just a normal ship.
It is a fairly standard ship. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cool that they sail it to the edge of the universe so that their mouse friend can go join Aslan in Aslan's universe.
Yeah.
But
it's a pretty cool series, and if we're going to talk about ships, I had to drag it in.
No problem. Dawn Treader, honorable mention. I also got the opening line from the Voyage of the Dawn Treader right here. There was a boy called Eustace Clarence Scrubb, and he almost deserved it. That's a good opening line.
Yeah, it's a very good opening line.
Having to be a crew member of the Dawn Treader does make Eustace a better human being, so that's good.
Okay, so as the two people on the podcast who have actually read the damn thing, go back to...
Hey, you know what's a weird ship that I love? And I think has a lot of potential?
Tell us.
Dipper Pines and Pacifica Northwest.
Dipper Pines... What?
From Gravity Falls.
Okay, I didn't know there were ships in Gravity Falls. I haven't seen all of it.
I'm talking about shipping characters rather than actual ships.
Right. Back to this.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Dipper and who?
Pacifica Northwest is Mabel's rival.
The blonde girl.
But I mean, based on the episode where he has to go get the ghost for them, I think that they could work really well once Pacifica gets their shit together.
But see, that's the problem. I get frustrated by that. Oh, let's cram the villain with somebody who's really good, usually the protagonist, so they can become a good person, instead of just being like, no, they're a bad person, they're a villain, In this case, not a significant villain, but a villain all the same.
But I mean, that starts before that episode. That really starts with the golf
I think
episode.
there's some setup for that as a thing, and I think that episode in particular kind of pushes it as a possibility, but I've never been a fan of those kinds of ships, personally.
I liked the potential for character growth for Pacifica there.
And I would agree with you if she didn't immediately backpedal as fast as she could at the end. If there was something that stuck from that, I would be on board. But I didn't feel like there was enough that stuck.
She's pretty solidly on board with doing the right thing in the finale, though. Like, she's mad at her dad for trying to ally with Bill.
Sure.
And she participates in the circle ritual thingy to put an end to everything.
Yeah. I feel like that was more of a... She was never that evil. So she was, of course, going to draw a line at a certain... And that was the point where that line got drawn.
I think that being able to see that she draws that line and her parents don't can help her deprogram her parents' bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I thought they were cute solving mysteries together.
Oh, definitely.
I think when they're grown up and have their lives figured out...
There's a potential future there.
Yeah.
All right. And so... Sorry, I interrupted. But you guys have been going on. I'm going to have to pare that down a little bit. Anyhow, we're going to move right along and crash head first with no segue in sight. The Helicarrier.
Critical. We had to touch it at some point.
Yep, from the Marvel universes, Marvel multiverse, Marvel nonsense. The Helicarrier is the mysterious organization S.H.I.E.L.D''s airship, aboard which the Avengers and all of that happens, as far as the cinematic universe is concerned. Captained, I guess, or commanded by Nick Fury and all his eye patchy goodness.
The Helicarrier is... Well, first off, there's not just one Helicarrier, right?
Of course,
we know that there's more than one.
Mm-hmm. Gotta have backups. There's lots of explosions in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I mean, they always seem to end up at the bottom of the ocean or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or dumped on Washington, D.C., as the case may be. It's definitely a very cool ship. Every iteration of it I've seen has always been really impressive. A ship of that size that can just kind of float around the world, because it can.
Yeah, and in particular, I really do like the design that's in the cinematic universe.
Yeah. I think that leans towards being the most common one in the comics, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
While we're talking about the Helicarrier, I think we should also talk about the Aeromarine from Next Wave.
What?
The Aeromarine.
Okay.
Instead of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Next Wave, there is Hate, which I guess means that they exist in the same universe, because Next Wave is roughly canon.
Well, the same multiverse, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything in Marvel is canon. It's just relegated
just
to its...
No, but I think Next Wave takes place in the main universe.
Okay.
Anyway, rather than the S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a helicarrier. The Aeromarine is several submarines bolted together with rocket engines.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Is it in the water, or is it somehow in the air still?
I believe it is somehow in the air still.
I see. That's
Yeah,
even
why
more
not?
impressive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Next Wave.
Yeah. No, and as far as continuities go, it's whichever one is the main one right now, basically, because the reboots happen constantly. So, we talked about the Helicarrier.
Hey, let's jump back in time a little bit.
Oh, dear.
And let's see if anybody else here is a fan of Thunderbirds.
Nope.
No! Oh, Thunderbirds. Love it.
Is that the one with the different color, like Power Ranger, Voltron, bird people?
No. So Thunderbirds is an old show from, I believe it's from the 60s. It's one of those old marionette shows.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which I love. I love those things. The Thunderbirds are I believe they're a family. They're a squad of people that go and rescue people in danger in these extreme situations, and they have a set of 5 vessels at their disposal.
Mm-hmm.
Thunderbird 4 would be their seagoing ship. It is actually a submarine, but there is, of course, 1, 2, and 3 that are air and or space going, all of which are very cool. I think actually that my favorite is probably Thunderbird 2, which is their air-going vessel. It's rather large and can actually carry some of the other vessels inside of it to be deposited in other locales for the purposes of one of their very cool rescues.
And I certainly did see the Thunderbirds and all that when I was doing research for this episode, but since I didn't know what it was, didn't know.
I recommend it if you get a chance.
Are you sure? It's from the 60s.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will supplement it with a recommendation of Fireball XL5, which is another very good show. That one is black and white and also marionette, and the name of the ship is Fireball XL5, which is super cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to do another very brief honorable mention here. Talk about the AMS Predator. There is an author known as Jim Butcher, who's most famous for his Dresden Files series, also wrote the Codex Alera, and now has a new series that the first novel has been out for a while, called The Cinder Spires. And The Cinder Spires is a steampunk series with airships like steampunk do, and is very cool, very interesting, powered by crystals, which is fun all the time. Vat-grown crystals, I believe. And yeah, it's got its own, unique spin on all the technological, magical doohickeys and nonsense and bimbobs and all that. One of the most interesting parts of it that I liked was the fact that in order to do the magic in this world, it causes various psychoses. So they're not usually catastrophic, but it's like can induce obsessive compulsive disorder and all sorts of other stuff like that. So it was very fascinating as far as that goes, and two of the main characters do have their various neurotic, but that's as far as that particular honorable mention is going to go. And while I'm on this topic, I'm going to talk about a very similar series called called Tales of the Ketty J, which the first novel of which is called Retribution Falls. Very funny, very witty book along the same lines, less magic, more punk, and yeah, just clever, swashbuckling stories. The titular ship is called the Ketty J. That's all I'll say about it.
Honorable mention for the Penguin submarine from the 60s Batman movie.
You're telling me that you're not going to talk about Batboat?
Other than it is a bat boat.
It is a boat. It's a boat with bat on it.
Okay.
Boat with Batman on it. Batboat. Shark repellent.
That's in the helicopter.
That's in the helicopter. What? Why do they have to repel sharks from a helicopter?
Because he
jumped into the water from the helicopter.
Yeah.
Why wasn't he in his Batboat? You don't need shark.
The situation initially didn't call for the Batboat. It's Adam West. Don't question him, okay?
Because
don't
they
need shark
to
repellent
dangle
if you
them
have a
both
boat.
off of a rope ladder.
Well, yes, but you don't need shark repellent if you have a boat.
I mean,
sure you do. If you get out of the boat,
well,
just like you got out of the helicopter.
Yes, I suppose
because he was trying to get onto another boat that didn't actually exist.
I suppose the orca would argue with that whole shark repellent argument. Anyway. Yeah.
Anyway, the Penguin has a submarine. It is painted to look like a penguin. Its periscope pops up and it's a little penguin head. It is very cute.
It kind of is.
Yes.
It is a decommissioned nuclear submarine that someone purchased under the name P.N. Gwyn.
Yes.
And the government sees nothing wrong with this, and Batman tells them they're an idiot for it to their face.
Yes.
Well, over the phone, but still, it's great.
Does he tell them they're idiots? Because I think he has to think about it for a moment too.
He says it very slowly so that they understand.
Oh, okay.
And as I recall, this is in fact original series, right?
Yeah.
This is the movie.
60s, the movie, right? Yeah.
This is
Adam
the
West 60s
Batman.
movie.
Yeah,
there
Adam
was
West
a series in the 40s as well.
Was there? I did not know that. Okay.
It's okay.
I mean, the one that I
to
actually...
put it kindly.
Adam West is my Batman. He's the one that I grew up with. So.
But yeah, so...
I'm not that old, but, you know.
I grew up with... Specifically the movie. I didn't see much of the actual series until I was older.
Like, every day.
Yeah,
and the animated series, so...
Yes, I think the one crossover that needs to happen is an animated series of Batman where the Penguin comes in and he's got a bunch of little penguins around him. And one of them is Gunter.
Oh, God.
I don't feel like Gunter would put up with...
What? No, you can't take my soul.
shenanigans.
Yes, he would not. Absolutely. Moving on.
Although, he might be able to turn the Penguin into a decent pawn.
Moving right along before I make more penguin noises.
I'm going to be the one to do this. I'm not proud of it. I never finished it, but it's going to have to be mentioned. The Pequod.
This is Moby Dick.
Yep.
It's Moby Dick.
Did any of you guys finish that book?
No, I barely started it.
I made it like a third of the way through before I had to bail.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
I finished the Looney Tunes parody comic of it. Does that count?
There you go. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yes.
Look, the premise of it's great. I think the characters and stuff are interesting.
quote
The
from it.
situation is interesting.
Yes.
I think somebody other than Melville should have written it.
Well, it's like, I know enough about it to do the important quotation, which is, "From Hela's heart I stab at thee."
We all know that one.
Yes, and
Look.
also Call Me Ishmael.
Archer, for those who are not familiar, is a huge Melville fan. Even he has admitted on the show that, yeah, it's difficult to read Melville stuff. It's dry, it's boring, it's hard to work your way through.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you could say that about Lord of the Rings, too.
Lord of the Rings does a better job of keeping you invested and interested.
Yes. I personally think that once you finish reading Lord of the Rings becomes able to be read again. Much better.
Definitely gets easier.
All of that was a sentence, I swear. I can English.
It gets easier on reread.
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk very, very brief honorable mention because it's fucking bonkers. Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer has an airship.
In the comics.
Well, obviously.
Because the comics are insane. What happens in the comics, dear?
Buffy and Angel have sex while flying because for some reason one of them learns how to fly.
Yes.
Also, Buffy and Willow hook up.
Yes. And Spike has an airship captained by demons. That's all you need to know.
Why not?
Honorable mention over.
Do we know if that's going to be the same continuity as the new... Because that was all Dark Horse, and they're launching a new series with Boom. Is it going to continue from the Dark Horse continuity, or is it going to be a whole new comic series? That
I'm gonna
those
say if
other
they have a
comics
lick
don't
of sense,
count.
it'll be its own continuity.
Because
Yeah.
Joss Whedon's writing for both of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like from what you've described, he may want to etch-a-sketch that shit.
Is Joss Whedon the new Gene Roddenberry, where somebody's gonna stand on his desk until he gives up and finishes the episode?
Je ne sais pas. That might be Martin.
Hmm?
George R.R. Martin. Finish the book.
See, he's not going to.
Yeah.
He has no impetus to do so.
Y'all are pronouncing words weird, and that's usually my thing. Hey, you're a Final Fantasy fan. Talk about the thing.
The High Wind?
Yeah.
Okay, first off, saying that I'm a Final Fantasy fan is probably stretching the term fan.
Okay.
I do like Final Fantasy. I just don't have the patience to sit through the games.
Okay. Which is odd, because that's all there is.
If they were half as long, or if they were movies, I would be all about it.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Final Fantasy VII, there's an airship. There's airships in a lot of the Final Fantasy series, but this is kind of like the quintessential one.
It's the one everybody's familiar with, the
Yeah.
High Wind for sure, and its namesake character, Sid Highwind, is also definitely he's the most popular of the Sids.
Yeah,
I think.
probably.
For those who aren't familiar, there are only two things that connect all of the games:
Sid
and what's the other name they use every time?
Oh God, fucking. I'm blanking.
I am also blanking. There are two names that appear in every game, even though the rest of the games have no connection. Traditionally,
it's not Mog, is it, or is that?
No. Chocobos are actually another thing.
Well,
that's
Chocobos
consistent,
and Moogles,
but there are two names that appear in every game. Sid is one of them, and then Chocobos appear in every game.
Yeah.
Other than that, they are, well,
Loosely.
until relatively recently, every single game was its own standalone. They often had airships. The High Wind is probably the most well-known of them. It is the one from Final Fantasy VII. My personal favorite Final Fantasy is actually the one that originally came out here as 4, but was actually 2. It also has...
Yeah, I think it has like 3 airships, doesn't it?
It's been a long time since I've played it.
I
know it
might
has
be
at least one.
and I might be thinking of a different Final Fantasy because
But Final Fantasy airships in general are very, very cool. The High Wind is...
and one of the most phallic. Anyway. Yeah, no, and I'll talk...
Speaking of ships we want to bang.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Brainiac's got a ship. It's shaped like his face. Also, that seems to be going around. Yeah, Brainiac has his skull ship, which features prominently in the game Injustice 2, in which Superman is evil and shit. And it's moral stuff, things, and badness. Yes. I haven't. Can you tell that I've paid so much attention to Injustice 2? Which is weird, because I've watched all the cutscenes for that game. I haven't actually bought the game because, it's not my cup of tea.
I mean, if
but
you're not going to play it, you have to play it.
Yeah, but the cutscenes are good, and the design for the Brainiac skull ship is also good in that particular appearance of it. Are you sure you don't want to talk more about Batboat?
I unfortunately don't know that much that is notable about Batboat.
No, dear, that was a joke.
Okay.
Yes.
I like that it flies, or not flies, it sails through the vines to get into the cave. I think that's cute.
Alright, speaking of Star Trek, we should talk about Star Trek parodies. Tell me about Galaxy Quest.
Oh boy, Galaxy Quest.
I don't remember what the name of the ship is.
Well, you can at least tell me some of the big actors in the movie, right?
Justin Long.
We've
Tim
got
Allen.
Tim Allen.
What's the
Snape.
Rickman.
Yeah,
Alan
Rickman.
Ripley.
So the name of the
yes.
The name of the ship is the NSEA Protector.
Yes, that's the Protector.
And it was built by
a race of childlike aliens
who are fans of their in-universe version of Star Trek. So they built this ship to be a replica of the one from the show.
It's a functional replica, which is insane. Like, here's this show that had, questionable scientific whatever, and they were able to... This race of child aliens was actually able to make a functional replica of it, including their big...
It literally functions on plot structure.
Pretty much, yeah.
When they have to fix it at the end...
Well, it's not they have to fix it, they have to use the big fancy weapon thing that never actually got used on the show because the show got cut off on a cliffhanger, so nobody actually knows what this thing is supposed to do. There's all these guesses. The fans have this discussion back on Earth about, oh, well, some people say it does this thing, some people say it does that thing, as they're guiding them through the insane, stupid chain of obstacles they have to get through, including a thing called the Crusher.
Well, sounds good. Alright, so do you want to talk briefly about Frankenfurter's spaceship?
It's the castle.
Yeah?
It's literally just a flying castle.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Sounds like a solid ship to me.
Yeah, his castle turns out to be a spaceship at the end of the movie and all that.
Like, it takes off and leaves the humans on the ground in lingerie, crawling and confused, and singing one of the best songs in the movie, I think. It gets cut from a lot of cuts of it.
If you had to pick one thing from this episode to recommend, what would it be?
Farscape.
Farscape?
Farscape.
Should watch Farscape?
Yes, you should watch Farscape. It has its cult following, but I don't think it got as much credit as it should. And like many series, it gets real weird and silly at the end, but they do it well.
Oh, okay.
Like, there's a whole Looney Tunes episode.
Oh, dear.
And it's amazing.
I'm going to break the rules, and I'm going to give two, because one of them is way too obvious.
There aren't rules. Go ahead.
Okay. The obvious one is Star Trek. If you haven't seen it, please... just watch Next Generation, and then from there you'll be hooked and you'll have to watch the rest.
Yes.
My less obvious one, I'm gonna go with Harlock. Space Pirate Captain Harlock.
Okay.
If you want to just dip your toes, watch the CGI movie. I believe it's from 2013, starring Shonoguri. Really, really good. The cartoon is a little aged, but still very, very good. I highly recommend it.
Alright, well, mine is Venture Brothers. Y'all should watch Venture Brothers. It's one of the best adult cartoons available and deserves all your love and support. Thanks for listening. If you want more of Matt Wimmer, you can find him on YouTube at Bismuth Telluride Powered. That's BI2TE3 Powered. Morgan Fay is often a guest at Picklewater Industries on YouTube. And if you'd like to reach the podcast, you can email us at fightmenerdpodcast@gmail.com or reach us on Twitter at FMNerdPodcast. Thanks so much. Have a good one.